welcome to the parallel room. The next talk is State of Jenkins Automation. I'll put Julien Pivotto.
Thank you. Hello everyone, I am Julien Pivotto. I am sysadmin at Inuit. My main tasks are around automation, monitoring, availability, and currently our continuous integration. I've been using Jenkins for more than 5 years now. I've been contributing to a few modules as well. So that's my background. Inuit is a company that does open source stuff in Belgium, like development, systems administration, a lot of things. We also are active in a couple of European countries. So Jenkins, I guess that everyone knows what Jenkins is. It's a CI server, it's a Java application. The first release was in 2011, but it was a fork of another product called Hudson, which was born in 2005. It's important to notice that it's written in Java because in the first iteration, really, it was used by the Java world. They were highly coupled with tools like Maven, and that's changing a lot now. They are less into the Java world, but more general purpose CI system. So, but since 2 or 3 years, we see that pattern that not only the Java world is using Jenkins nowadays, but like everyone is using Jenkins. So what can you do with Jenkins? Yeah, with Jenkins, people, they test, they build, they deploy their software, the software they build, the services they build, and also nowadays their infrastructure with tools like Puppet, Terraform, all those things. Now, in most of the companies, they also go to a testing process and the deployment process, which is controlled by tools like Jenkins. It's not the case everywhere, and some tools like Ansible don't actually force you to do that, but most of companies will just use CI systems like Jenkins to also deploy the infrastructure. So that means that Jenkins is mission critical. And it's a pattern that I've been seeing in the last 2 or 3 years, is that when Jenkins is done, you cannot deploy anymore, you cannot do, run any new software anymore, you cannot react to the problem that you have. So Jenkins is really important in the modern stacks. And it means that it needs to be automated in some way, because what's not automatic basically does not exist, and if you cannot reproduce a service and you're in trouble, it's really painful. So the scope for today is to say how we can automate the Jenkins itself and all the stuff that are around Jenkins. So why is it so hard to automate Jenkins? So in a lot of environments, Jenkins is still in version 1 point something. In others, it's blocked at a certain version for 3, 4, 5 years maybe. Well, the first reason is that at a certain point to automate Jenkins, you use the GUI. But then if you want to upgrade Jenkins, then you need to upgrade it in place. And that's a major problem, because you are not confident that the upgrade you will do will still work. So that's a first problem. Then Jenkins is easy to deploy. In lots of environments, people just take the WAR file or the package, I install it and start Jenkins. And there is no automation around that, which means that when it's time to upgrade, it's just a developer tool. It's not part of the infrastructure, so we will not upgrade it. We will not take the opportunity to automate it or do anything like that, because it's my tool, right? It's the developer's team tool, and no one should touch that actually. And also the last stuff is that Jenkins itself is a really small tool, in the sense that you need to have plugins to have it working the way you want. The Jenkins setups I see have between 20 and 50 plugins installed, and those plugins sometimes they don't play nice with Jenkins upgrades. So you need those plugins because they provide some core functionalities of Jenkins, but still you want to be sure that upgrading Jenkins will not break them. But still you need that. Why do you need to upgrade your Jenkins? The first reason is security, because it's not because Jenkins has a lot of security issues. It's because Jenkins has access to a lot of things. the source code, which for most companies like the most important assets, the servers where you will deploy stuff. All of those things makes Jenkins a very high value target. So if you want to attack a system, yeah, start with Jenkins, because if you crack it, you will have a lot more than just CI access. You will have access to a big part of the platform. Then Jenkins has a lot of bugs, so and that's valid for the plugins and for the Jenkins itself. And upgrading also prevents you to hit those bugs. So it's also an important part of why you want to upgrade Jenkins. Instead of working around the bugs in Jenkins, just upgrade it. The second reason why it is hard to automate Jenkins is because its configuration is in XML. And while there are some tools that can play with XML, it's really hard to do. And if the API, if the plugin changes, or if the Jenkins change, you don't know how you will need to change the XML again. And also the first time you want to see, okay, how do I configure that in the XML? It's really a big loss of time to try to change the XMLs. What do you need to automate if you want a fully automated Jenkins setup? So there is the Jenkins service. That's easy, the web interface. I want to be able to have access to Jenkins. Then the configuration of Jenkins, like the security, the plugins, all that things. Then the data inside Jenkins, like which jobs do I have in my Jenkins? How do I, if I have feature branches, how easy is it for me to create a job for that feature branch? Inside the job as well. So what does this job do? Do I really need to go to the UI and see, okay, oh, but a developer has changed that configuration yesterday and now the job is not working anymore? What's happening? So inside the job is also something you want to automate. And the last step is the Jenkins node. So in really small setups, maybe you run the jobs on the Jenkins master, but in lots of environments, you just have several nodes, which were called in the past slaves. And in those slaves, you will actually run the builds themselves. And you also want to have control over that. So that if, for example, on one slave, you have Firefox 45, and then there is a new Firefox update, and you update that Firefox so that the Selenium test with the latest Firefox, for example. You want to have that under your control. So first part, automating the service. So that's quite easy. Chef, Puppet, Ansible, they all have their own modules or playbooks, receipts. I don't know what you call them for Chef, but they all have what you need. The last one, Docker, is also one that I am using because there is an upstream Jenkins Docker image that you can use, and I will come to that later. So if you want to automate the Jenkins service itself, you can do it with those traditional tools. So what about Docker? Because you know Docker is not a config management system. So if you have a proper way to deploy your Docker containers, then it might be an option for you. Like my current setup is like I deploy Jenkins in a Docker container, but the complete Docker stack is deployed with Puppet, for example. If you go that way, you should ensure that you don't run any job on the master, because that master will be running in the case of Jenkins, Ubuntu, or Alpine if you take the upstream Docker image. And yeah, if you have a job that needs to run in Alpine, it's probably not very, it doesn't do a lot, I think, because in Alpine you are very, very limited. So in that case, you should disable the executors on the master. You should think about how you deploy that container and how you can upgrade it and build it again and again. So, but apart from that, if you have a good way to deploy your Docker containers, then you can go that way and it will be fine. Jenkins plugins. So you can install them with the UI, but this is a talk about automation. So you can also install them from the CLI. Basically, what you need to know is that they come from updates.jenkinsci.org. So if you want to do something with them, you can just look at them. There is a JSON on that directory that can give you all the information about all the plugins that you need. But what we also do is like we take the Jenkins plugin and we make them into RPMs. Because it's easy, you can guess, you know how you need to download them, you know they provide their own dependencies, all that thing. So that's something that is possible to do, that when you don't, when you use the traditional Jenkins, you can do that so that when you upgrade the plugin, you know which one you upgrade to which version and that kind of things, and it's easy to roll back and all that kind of things. It's actually easy. But in the case of Dockerized Jenkins setup, then we do the opposite. Well, we, instead of trying to make packages for all the Docker plugin, all the plugins, we just make a mirror of the complete repository, updates the jenkinsia.org. So that way, we know that we will be able to reproduce a Docker container with the mirror that we have. You need to be careful because by default, Jenkins will fetch the latest version. So if you have too much caching on that latest directory for each plugin, that your plugins will never get updated. There is a script to install also. If you don't use Docker, you can still use that script that will fetch and install the plugins for you. It's in the Docker image of Jenkins. It's a bash script. So that's about the global Jenkins. That's actually the easy part, so just getting the service running. But how do you actually do the configuration in a way that it will be reproducible and it will be automated? Well, it's easy. Change the XMLs. No, don't change the XML. Never do that. There is one moment when you can change the XML files. Is when you screw up your security setup and you want to disable the security. Then you can go change the back up the XML file, disable security, restart Jenkins, and then OK. But it's the only opportunity you have to change the XML file, because that XML file, it will be changed by Jenkins when it starts. It will be changed by plugins. It will be changed by a lot of stuff, so you can really do a lot with that. And it's very, very complex to keep up to date with the XML configuration updates. There is a second option, which is the System Config DSL plugin. So it's a plugin that could allow you to configure Jenkins using Groovy scripts. I mean, in a DSL, which would be specific to Jenkins itself. The problem is that there is a Git repo, there is a story on the Jira, but the plugin actually is not there yet. So if you have some Java skills, there is some work for you. So the real option to automate your Jenkins setup is Groovy. So Groovy is a DSL. Yeah, it's another language to learn. It's a DSL built on top of Java. And when you use Jenkins, you can actually run Groovy there and do a lot of stuff just with that language. And actually, when you see how Puppet, how Chef, how Ansible is dealing with Jenkins automation and configuration, they also use Groovy. The difference is that, for example, for Puppet, they only have a limited subset of Groovy scripts to automate Jenkins. So it's not possible to do everything you want with just the Puppet module. For Chef, you can run any Groovy script with them own cookbook. But that's the point. Groovy is the way to go if you want to fully automate your Jenkins. One way to test the Groovy script that you write is to use the script console. So if you go to a Jenkins/script, then you have a nice console when you can actually do some Groovy coding and see what's happening. Obviously, only the administrators or the people with that permission can do that, because you can do whatever you want with Jenkins. And we will see examples just now. So you can also do that with curl, with the Jenkins API, the Jenkins CLI, all those things. So you have a lot of opportunities to run Groovy script inside Jenkins. So let's go for some examples of Groovy scripts that will be, I hope, relevant for you, and then I will provide you a list of things. So first of all, you want to disable the executors on the master so that there will be no jobs running on the master. Okay, you import Jenkins, and then you use the Jenkins instance, and you set the number of executors to 0. That's easy to understand, and it's not complex. And it's a core functionality, so that Groovy API is not going away anytime soon. That's the first example. Then in the build descriptions, you don't want to use the plain text but the HTML formatter. Then it's a bit more complex, because now you will need to import some classes from directly a plugin. So you will need the plugin installed, and then you will again use the Jenkins.instance, and then you will set the markup formatter to that plugin. Okay, that's also an easy one. Then setting the system message. So the message you have on the top of Jenkins, like to say, okay, that Jenkins will be in maintenance next week, or I don't know. You can do that. Set system message, it's still easy. But that's only for example for the Jenkins core functionalities. But when it's powerful is when you start also changing like the plugins configuration. So in this case, there is the simple temp plugin that you can use to put your logo on Jenkins, or to put custom CSS, anything that you want. It's a plugin that is there for like 4 years without updates, but like Jenkins as a quite stable API, it still works perfectly. So in this case, I will get the instance of the simple temp decorator plugin, and I will just apply some values and save it. And that will save it into the configuration of Jenkins. And it means that that simple temp plugin will now be configured with that value for the CSS URL. A side note is that Jenkins, in the Jenkins home directory, you have a user content directory when you can put files, and they will be served under the Jenkins URL/user content. So in this case, we have example.css file in user content directory in the Jenkins home, and we can just fetch it from the Jenkins web interface. So that's how you configure a plugin. You can configure the email settings, disable the usage statistics, but also set up the authentication authorization like LDAP, Active Directory, I don't know, anything you want. Set up a prefix URL, so if you want to access your Jenkins with /Jenkins. Set up the Jenkins slave, so the Jenkins node, the clouds, the global pipeline libraries, the credentials, so like the SSH keys that Jenkins will use, the API keys, all those things, and also the first job. So when you will see later how to do that, but like when you bootstrap a new Jenkins, usually what you have is a first job which is called a seed job that will just create the other jobs and views. And that's also something that we do in Groovy at that step.
What was the programming language? Is that Python?
Sorry?
What's the programming language you use for that?
No, for the seed job.
For the plugins?
Sorry?
For the plugins and changes that you just said.
It's Groovy. And I removed my link. Okay. So as a bonus, if you have the pipeline utility steps plugin, then you can actually, out of the box, load YAML text, load YAML files, and transform them into Groovy objects that you can use, and that you can use to loop and all that things. So basically, all our configuration of Jenkins is in YAML files, and then we use Groovy to turn that into actual Jenkins configuration. Okay, you don't have to take note of that. That will be on the slides, but you have a lot of resources on the internet that will show you a lot of Groovy script to configure about everything in Jenkins. Then when you want to write your own, you also have the Javadocs. So this is the API implementation of Jenkins. The links are there, but you also have javadoc.jenkins.io, which will link to the latest ones. And they also do that for the plugins. So the plugins that are under the Jenkins CI GitHub organization, they also get the Javadocs there. So if you want to configure a plugin and you don't find a Groovy script to do it, you can just go to there, look for the plugin, its APIs, and then make your own script. Okay, that's fine. We have lots of Groovy scripts, but we still need to go to the console to run them. So my Jenkins is not automated. It's like I need to do stuff manually. Well, Jenkins has an init.groovy.d directory, and it's a directory where all the Groovy scripts that are there will just be executed when Jenkins is starting. So you know when Jenkins is starting, you have that message. Jenkins is getting ready to work. And basically, during that moment, there is a step where it will go to that directory and run every Groovy script. So at the end, when that message is gone, you know that all your Groovy scripts are also executed. If a script is failing, it will not start your Jenkins. That's the bad point, is that you need to be sure that your Groovy scripts run without problems, because if there is a problem, you won't have a Jenkins at all. And it means that when you have a fresh Jenkins, you know that when you have access to the GUI, all your scripts are executed, and you are ready to go, ready to work. One thing important is that the scripts are run sequentially. It means that if you want to first set up the LDAP, then set up the authorization, then you need to do that sequentially. So you need to change the file names, that kind of things. But it makes it repeatable, so that's actually nice. So that was for the configuration. So what we do is we create all those Groovy scripts and we put them in the init.groovy.d directory, and once we have access to the Jenkins UI, we know that we are good to go. Actually, in our Docker Jenkins setup, we don't set the Jenkins configuration in a Docker volume, which means that each time we restart Jenkins, we have a fresh Jenkins that runs the Groovy scripts, and we know that there is no human intervention in the configuration because we didn't save the configuration. So now inside Jenkins, you can do the inside of Jenkins, the jobs view in multiple ways. First, the GUI, that's not what we want to know. The init.groovy.d, you should just make your C job there. Then you have the Jenkins Job Builder and the Jenkins Job DSL. First, the Jenkins Job Builder, it's an OpenStack project written in Python, which is not integrated in Jenkins. So it's a script that you need to run and that will generate the XML for you. It has support for some plugins, you can extend it. But our experience with that is that if you update it, and if you actually want another plugin to be integrated into that Jenkins Job Builder, you make a request or a GET request to OpenStack project, and they will just say, oh, nothing. They will just not integrate it because they are not interested into that. So that's our experience. So it's nice, but if you cannot really extend it, then it's not so interesting. But still, it allows you to put your job configuration under source control under your Git repository, so that's fine. It's also worth noting that this is completely declarative. So you have templates, but still you cannot do some scripting, some loops. All those things are not really possible with the Jenkins Job Builder. Then you have the init.groovy.d. So basically, this is init.groovy.d that will create a seed job. It's a bit cheating because it's actually a Jenkins Job DSL pipeline in this case. So we use the init.groovy.d to call the Job DSL pipelines, the Job DSL plugin once with that definition. We'll come to that just after that. So, but the idea is that that is more readable than 10, 20 API calls from Jenkins. You just run that and you have a first job that will run and that you know that will be called your seed job. So Job DSL, it's a Jenkins plugin that comes from Netflix. And it's another DSL, and it allows you to create views and jobs, but not using the Jenkins internal APIs, but using the Jenkins Job DSL APIs. It also allows you to put your job configuration under Git, so that's really cool. Once again, it's groovy all over the place, so if you didn't understand yet, you will need to somehow learn Groovy if you want to fully automate your Jenkins. So the Jenkins Job DSL actually is a big community nowadays, and they support a lot of plugins, and each release brings more plugins support, and some plugins can also auto-generate their API into the Job DSL, so all of that is actually very nice. First example with the Job DSL. So the idea of the Job DSL is that you have a file and you execute that file with that plugin. So to create a job, I specify job, the name of the job, SCM, Git, the Git URL, the branch, and then some steps, like a shell step. And I have a job that if I need to go to the UI to create it, it would take me like, I don't know, the time to find Git, to fill in the URL, to fill in the branch, to the steps, a shell step way, which, that is really easy, more easy than to go to the UI, especially when you want to change the job, or when you want to change 10 jobs or 100 jobs. A Jenkins Pipeline job, so we will come to Jenkins Pipeline later, but it's the same stuff, just in this case, okay, we specified the script, you can specify the file. The idea there is that it's just as simple as a job, you just need to know which things you need to use, which functions you need to use. But a job also has some properties like some parameters, description, how much builds you want to keep. All of that is really easy. Actually, in my previous Jenkins installation, we didn't use that, and we had an extra Jenkins job that just checked that all the builds have the max number of builds to keep, because it was filling the disk, and sometimes you change a job, you forgot to add that, so that was painful. Just like in the init.groovy.descripts, you can just read YAML files, except that you have a read file from workspace function that's really easy, so that you can just say, okay, I will take that cfg.yaml file and map that to a configuration. And then I will make a loop over that. It means that, okay, for each job in that configuration, I will create a pipeline job with the name. If there is a trigger section in my YAML file and a SCM section, I will just put the SCM to that one, and that kind of thing. So you can actually script each of these steps, each of these groovy things, and it's really easy. You have if, loops, everything you need, you have access to that. So if you want to loop over a branch, to loop over anything, you can just do it. It's really easy. You can also create views. So I want a list view for my project A, which will follow that regex, and I want those columns, all those things. Everything is possible, even the plugins. Like I want to use the Build Monitor plugin, which is a plugin that will show you a view that you can put on a big TV screen, for example. Okay, it supports that plugin, so you actually know what you need to do. Like I want that job on a view from that plugin. And you have actually in your own Jenkins, you have actually an API viewer, so you can view which plugins are supported by the Job DSL plugin and how you need to use each one of them. The parameters, all of that is explained on that API viewer, so it's really, really great. And it means that if you have a plugin that's not supported by the Job DSL plugin, but that somehow it can auto-generate its commands, then it will just show there as well. So that's really great. You can call the Job DSL inside the Jenkins pipelines. So I have a bit of a chicken and egg problem because I speak about the pipeline, but I have not explained that yet, but okay. So in this case, I will just say, I want to call the Job DSL plugin with all the files in the seeds directory. And then when I remove a job from the seed, when one job is not generated from that seed, then I want to delete it, and the same from the views. It is clever enough so that it will only delete the jobs and the views that have been created before by the Job DSL plugin. Then you can also say, okay, I have that jar file which contains my own Java library. I want to also load that. So you can just additional class path and you pass it. That was the way that we loaded the YAML library before it was integrated by accident in a plugin. So we just have the snake YAML jar file there and it just worked. So the job DSL is really like complete freedom of what you can do with the job configuration and all those things. Now Jenkins Pipeline. Jenkins Pipeline is Jenkins job as code, known as Jenkins file. It's kind of the reaction of Jenkins to the Travis CI, the GitLab CI, and all those who doesn't have a UI, and you can just have like that configuration file, Travis CI.yaml. For a long time it has been imperative, so like it was a Groovy script and you could do crazy things into it. And now you have the declarative pipeline, but I will explain that. So a Jenkins file, it is meant to live in your source code directory next to your actual code. And actually it contains a definition of a job. You don't need to use a GUI to define everything, and you define everything that your job needs. So that's really the content of the job, including what you do with the test result. What do you send an email? Do you deploy the application? All of that is inside that Jenkins file, which, by the way, is also Groovy. So, and for the plugins that are not integrated directly inside the pipeline itself, there is a step plugin that allows you to call lots of them already. So pipelines, if you want, you can do them in the GUI. Yeah, there is a visual pipeline editor, which is still work in progress. But basically, in the job themselves, you have a pipeline syntax link that allows you to write some snippets that will show you, oh, I can do that step in a pipeline file, and then you click generate, and you get the output that needs to go to your pipeline file. So that's the theory of a pipeline. Like I have a node, Ubuntu EMD64. That's the label, so it's used by Jenkins to know when which slave it needs to run. I have a stage checkout. I will check out the SCM. I will run make and then run make test. In practice, you have some steps that are outside of a stage, which cause a visualization problem and timing problems. Then inside the stage, you need to have try catch, which is like if there is an error in make, then just publish that artifact, set the build to unstable, and throw the error again, because otherwise the pipeline just stops. So that is never executed when there is a failure in the make stuff. So in practice, pipeline were not that useful, because you need to have a lot of stuff like that everywhere, and that was not practical. So now you have declarative pipelines, which basically are like, you define the complete pipeline, and you can do like everything needs to be like following a strict way of doing. Like you need to have some stages, you cannot have steps everywhere. You can set global options for the complete pipeline, a global agent. By default, it will check out the SCM where your Jenkins file is. In the previous version, you needed to do it by hand on the node. You also have post definition, so like I know I will always do the GUnit stuff even if there is a failure, so that's also great. You don't need that try catch stuff anyway. So now you can just have post always, and it will just be very happy to always run that piece of code or that email notification. You can also have post failure and then send an email. So the declarative pipeline was out at the end of February of January. So it's a lot more clever, and what is important is that it's more natural for people who are used to the old Jenkins, because it's the way that the old interface works, and you don't need to actually do a lot of groovy magic to get stuff just like you want. So if you want to go further with pipeline, you can like use global libraries. I will not cover that today. and create them with the Job DSL plugin directly. So that's why I explained before. Jenkins nodes. Yeah. What we use to automate the Jenkins nodes is Docker because it allows us to like have a clean node when we start build and to shut the node after the build is stopped, so we know that each time we have a clean environment to build on. And it's easy for us to update the Docker containers. I will come to that. The Docker plugins makes Docker appear like as a cloud for Jenkins, so it will just say, hey Docker, I want that node, and Docker will just start the node and Jenkins will just connect to it and run the jobs into it. It means that we built a container like CentOS 7, we will add a tag candidate, we push it to the registry, then we run some tests into that new Docker image, and then the power is when you run an actual build using that candidate. It means that CentOS has updated Firefox. Okay, I will run a container with that new Firefox, that new container, and if the build is still working, then I will just tag the build with release, and I push it, and the next job will run always that release new Docker container. And that way I know that an external CentOS upgrade will not break my builds. If my builds are broken, my containers will not update also. But that's less dramatic than having just all the tests broken because Firefox was upgraded and I could not react to that before actually doing that. So that way we know that something is broken at that stage and we can fix that. In practice, we automate the Docker plugin with Groovy because it's a pain in the UI. When you have more than one container, it's a pain to configure that plugin. And all of the candidate and release tags are just Jenkins nodes in that UI. And we give them two labels, image and the tag, like build CentOS 7 and candidate. And the job themselves, they have a tag parameter which defaults to release, so that we can actually choose which tag we want to build each job. So that's what the build Jenkins file looks like. So I will just say I want that agent, so I want to run that on a build CentOS 7 container with the tag that I've got in parameters. And to build the Docker images, I use the Docker build step, like docker.build, no cache. I tag as candidate, I push to my registry, and then I run some script inside that node, and then I build that job, but I will give the tag parameter to candidate. If that fails, the job will stop, the pipeline will stop, and if it's successful, then it will just continue and tag as release and push the release to the Docker registry. So that's how we do that. It means that we can update our CentOS or Ubuntu boxes several times a day, and it will not break the build, so the containers stay up to date. And also, you need to be able to know that if you run a build with a candidate tag, maybe you don't want to actually redeploy your complete software stack at the end. Maybe you want, but maybe your software cannot do that much deployments a day. So in that case, you might check inside your Docker file, okay, if this is a candidate tag, I don't want to do that thing. But apart from that, it's really, very a powerful way of updating your Jenkins nodes. Conclusion, you can automate a lot, everything in Jenkins actually. So what we use is in Groovy, Jenkins Job DSL pipeline. I should have Docker there. So that's what we use. We are very, very happy with that setup. A lot more happy than when we did in the past. So in the past, we really edited the XML files, all the stuff that I recommend you not to do. I am happy to talk about you if you have more questions about the Jenkins master in Docker containers, because that's also interesting. And also the new Blue Ocean interface for Jenkins. I'm also very happy to discuss with you. But yeah, it did not fill in this time slot, and I still have 50 seconds. So thank you. So if you have any questions.
8 minutes.
Yeah, because we started earlier. Yeah. Yeah, it's 45 minutes. Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, so we have 5 minutes for questions.